Hi everyone, good afternoon and thank you for joining us to the Meiyume Showcase 2022. We are coming live today from sunny Singapore and I'm Emma. I will be your moderator today for this session focused on the future of beauty, sustainable packaging and formulation. Sustainable packaging is not a new topic for me as I'm leading innovation team for primary packaging, but definitely formulation is new for me and I hope to learn with you today on this topic. In the next 45 minutes, I will be joined by my two colleagues. First, Stephane Bulle, who has 5 years in automotive industry experience and 16 years in cosmetic. He's now head of packaging development and innovation in Meiyume. He's holder of more than 25 patents and has fulfilled different positions within Meiyume. And Rance was 27 years in cosmetic and pharmaceutical product development, mostly in formulation for skincare and personal care segment. He will be our expert today for formulation, as he has a strong expertise in starting as a chemist and worked for multinational like P&G and L'Oreal worldwide. He also fulfilled a position as R&D and innovation, head of R&D and innovation for the Bulle shop before to join us on the last 2 years as VP for Global IM. So at the end of the session, do not hesitate. We'll have a Q&A session, so do not hesitate to type your question in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. So do not hesitate. It's really helpful for us, and we'll have more interactions onto that. We have a packed discussion ahead. So to start, I will ask a question first for two experts. So first, can you give us some insight on the market? What do you see in terms of packaging and formulation that you can share to our audience? Maybe you can start with packaging, Stephane.
Okay. Thank you, Emma. Yes, sure. To start on packaging, we can do kind of a 360 roundup and look at consumer level. Then we'll talk a little bit about brands and also regulation and legislation, which is evolving. So at the consumer level, what we can see is that various statistics across geographies and age and so on, but on an average, more than 75% of consumers actually want to see brand design products with sustainable attributes. This can actually go in various dimensions, whether it's with claims on global warming or reduction of environmental footprint, reduction of pollution in the oceans, and so on. So there is sustainability is not a trend. It's there, and actually at the consumer level, a majority of people want to see that translated into physical product and want to see brands actually action strong change, right? So actually transition for brands. What do we see at the brand level? We see that actually a lot of brands are starting to take some actions to use the solutions available to reduce environmental impact. It's a complex space to navigate. There are a number of solutions available, and to quantify is not, the reduction of impact is not always easy, and we'll talk about that later on. Overall, we see some brands are starting to communicate about the reduction of material on some pack. For example, X% less of plastic or metal in some kind of packaging, and even some brands are actually starting to use reduction of environmental impact, saying that using this new type of packaging will have an effect of X% of reduction of carbon emission on energy consumption or water consumption as well. Right, so I think this is great. This is developing awareness, and it's probably going to grow definitely as a common practice in the beauty industry. Now, last but not least, legislation regulation on the rise for packaging. packaging in the beauty industry, we've been using just a few materials for many years, and this is really, really changing now. This is transforming at an increasing speed. Regulations can actually take different shapes, and across regions, globally, we can see various interpretations, various way of doing it. So let's take a few examples. In France, for instance, we have a ban coming on all styrenes, which is quite impactful to the beauty industry because styrenes are actually very much used, especially in color cosmetic packaging. Those are going to be banned starting 2025. In UK, we have a tax coming next year on actually plastic packaging with less than 30% recycled material. Some rules coming in Asia with data collection. Here in Singapore, there is started last year. The NEA is asking all the brands to actually report, the bill of materials of each packaging. And last but not least, starting 24 in California, we will have actually regulation on the recyclability claim or label. So it will be required from the brand to actually prove that they're by a third party that actually their packaging is truly recyclable. So it's all that actually again it shows that definitely sustainability is not a trend, and it's part of the role of every actor in the industry, from material suppliers to transformers to the brands, and also we'll talk about it a little bit in the end, but also the consumer habits. It's basically a collective effort. Right?
Game changer a little bit, right? So thank you, Stephane. So definitely, I think we need to talk about it just after, about quantification of the footprint, the impact of regulatory recently coming to the scene. So maybe we can move with Matt. In terms of formulation on your side, what do you see on the market? Any trends, any global trends that you can see between packaging and formulation that you can share to us?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's very similar, but also very different. So the main themes are the same around the brands, the regulations, the consumer, but the complexity comes with the formulation because we use multiple different materials for lots of different gestures. So whereas packaging has regulated around a set of materials which is fairly small, we grow that by a distance, and we haven't got the regulatory landscape coming in the same way. So we haven't got the taxes, we haven't got the drivers behind it. Okay. So what's driving sustainability more in the formula area is the brand proposition and the approach to do something right, to still follow the sustainability of the brand ethics, but everyone's doing it slightly different. So we're seeing a multitude within market where the brand chooses a point of differentiation. And with the prevalence of indie brands coming onto the market, they all look for something slightly different.
Differentiate themselves.
So to differentiate, so they could have a high level of naturality, a high level of recyclability, a waterless format. So we're getting a lot more differentiation, but within different governing criteria. Most of that criteria is set by the brand. A lot of them are using NGOs. So again, the NGO tends to be specific to location. So when you talk about this on a global basis, the criteria to make an organic claim in the UK, in Europe, in Asia, in the US, slightly different. All on the same theme, but comes with a slightly different thing, which then brings us into how do we globalize formulas, how do we set a framework to work with it. From a regulatory perspective, we're seeing different regulations pertinent against location. So if you think about California, the US, they're starting to worry about biodegradability and what you're putting, when you wash the product off, if you use a wash-off product or you use a skincare, eventually it goes into our water streams. So they're now starting to concentrate on the sustainability of not just the front end, but also what happens after use. And when you look at a formula life cycle, it's you can physically pick up a package and go, okay, I can see the life cycle all the way through. we could take a formula which takes maybe 25 ingredients, we make 100,000 pieces, those 100,000 pieces go out to different areas, and then the consumer's going to use it in different ways. You know, I'll always talk about a wash-off product, saying the best thing I can do for sustainability is to spend 2 minutes less in the shower, and it doesn't matter what I do with my product. And I think bringing it to the consumers are also, you know, the trend at the moment is they're more knowledgeable. So they're starting to research. And if you go back a few years, that consumer was like caught in the headlights. They saw lots of different messages and they didn't really know which one to go. The messages are still coming, but they're now more informed, more research, more credibility, so they understand the proposition a bit more. And the biggest change for us in the formula landscape, I think, is people are also, not every consumer, but they'll accept a different gesture. So if you think about solid shampoo is not new, but because of plastic packaging, because of that, we're now having to formulate different products because the consumer will not accept it. Solid bars have been around long before I was, but now they're being accepted by that consumer because they want to make that conscious decision. So I think it's very similar to packaging, that the landscape is evolving. The brands that have been doing it for a long time continue to evolve with it. It's not a choice anymore. But the difficulty we have in formulation is that there's a lot of divergence. Rather than everyone following one set of standard or the packaging tax, you know, everyone's trying to form a niche within roughly the same guideline, but slight nuances within it.
More diversity, definitely, and the huge impact of consumer data. I think this one is a point that we should take later on in the discussion, because we know that in packaging there is a huge impact of the consumer data and also formulation. Mention it with these two examples are really interesting. So before to jump to this specific case, maybe I would like to ask you both to give us some insight about Meiyume strategy on packaging and formulation in terms of sustainability, what we can share. So I know that you prepare a few slides to be shared to the audience to help to viewer to follow it. So let's start with on packaging. That will help the people to understand our different targets. So maybe Stephane, can you help us?
Sure, definitely. So on packaging, we are really focused on the slide showing up. Okay, yeah. We are really, I mean, digging into, you know, a classic denomination, which would be the 3 R's, right? So we're looking at obviously reduce, reuse, and recycle, and we're gonna look a little bit on how we, you know, our approach, how we do it. The first thing actually I want to stress is that we want to be for the last I think for the last 3 years, we definitely adopted a data-driven approach, right? So with the will not to rely on, you know, subjective claims or you know, not falling into greenwashing, but definitely actually equip ourselves, our teams with the right tools to actually evaluate precise data to be able to actually demonstrate better environmental impact on the packaging solution that we are able to propose to the brands, right? We come from actually a core value proposition of multi-material, and we've been actually using that and transferring it to and injecting that into this, you know, the requirement of providing durable, sustainable solution. 3 axes actually. We look at performance. We have developed a lot of actually system for design for sustainability and recyclability. In terms of tool, we have equipped ourselves with design assessment tools at the packaging design stage. So we are actually since 2020 active member of the SPICE initiative. Design assessment tool, we are able to actually calculate, assess the environmental footprint of any packaging solution we propose. We also have developed our design for recyclability guidelines. Started aligning with actually Ellen MacArthur Foundation definition, but also projecting it in our knowledge of the various regions and markets. And of course, we have, we want those solutions. We want actually to test them and to make sure they will actually provide the same quality standard as, the solutions we were developing before, right? Materials is key. We will see it actually in the pillars that we have in our strategy. We have structured ourselves with, material expertise and dedicated material experts in the Meiyume packaging development team. And we are looking at basically all the main families of material, having also, industrial experimentation approach. We are testing everything. We scout and we test. We have, I think, tested more than 95 materials in the last 24 months. It's not easy. It's not always a success. We have around, I think, 30% of those materials that we can actually keep. We selected it, and we think we can actually develop some meaningful concept out. And obviously, we're exploring a balance, and we're looking at the main, the materials that are very promising for the recyclability streams. So we're looking at a number of plastic resins, PP, PET, obviously, but also aluminum, paper, and glass that we see as very promising for the future, given the fact that we need to transition from a linear approach to a circular approach, and recyclability, we'll see it is definitely key in one of our strategic pillars. Last but not least, aesthetic. I think Emma was mentioning it in the introduction. We've built a reputation on the market for highly decorated parts. It's always been one of our strengths in the packaging division of Meiyume. And we are putting a lot of efforts for those sustainable solutions actually to be able to look as good as the solutions we were developing before. So that requires actually a lot of work. We're still working on all the know-how that enables us to do customization. We have a number of very flagship reference that we manufacture for the brands where we use customization platform. We believe that the market has a quicker and quicker cycle, and it's very important to actually have packaging solutions that are compatible with that are agile enough to be transformed from a season to another to meet the market. Okay, we will.
I think maybe we should give some example because here maybe people following us will need some.
Sure,
example.
Definitely. So let's dive in. You can see innovation roadmap on the screen. You have basically two main axes. One on materials, and first pillar on the recycled material with PCR and PIR. Across soft material, plastic resins, and metal, we're exploring a lot of things. We have homologated a number of reference. Second axis is bio-based material. Bioplastic. Here we have actually scouted a lot of reference and tried a lot. And since May 2022, Meiyume is ISCC certified. That means we're enabling us actually to manufacture with bio-based PP, for instance. On another note, so on the packaging solution, two main axes. One, refill reuse. Across all categories, we are really trying to ideate and to experiment there with a lot of actually user tests because we know consumer habit is a very strong. There are a number of breakthrough to adoption on refill reuse. And last but not least, recyclability. Again, one of the key also concerns from a consumer standpoint. And so we are focusing really, as I was saying, on metal with a number of actually breakthrough concepts, including our full aluminum lipstick and some refillable jars. On one end for the mass and masstige market, and on another end for the prestige market. Fully in aluminum with also refillable system. Paper with a combination of processes, glass and also recyclable resins and resins to replace ABS, which will be banned soon in Europe in 2025. Right. I think that sums it up for basically all the main tracks and strategic pillars that we are currently exploring. And we encourage you to actually contact your Meiyume regional sales team to know more about it and to organize some customized presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Stephane. Definitely, it's a good illustration of Meiyume strategy and giving some concrete example of what we are doing. Maybe we can move to formulation with Matt. So Matt, can you give us some insight of Meiyume roadmap on formulation?
Yeah, so it's no surprise that there's a similar trend again. So as with packaging, we're looking into the materials, we're looking into research, using the combination between insights and regulations to develop the products. Our raw material offerings tend to be quite bespoke. So we work with brands, we work with all the way from small startup brands all the way through to the multinationals, where we provide that solution and we work with them to understand their guideline and then build it into the research that we're doing. So when we're looking at the efficacy of the product, the one thing that we're trying to achieve when we're trying to achieve sustainability is not to compromise on performance, because you can have the best product in the world for the environment or for the planet. If it's not very nice to use or it doesn't give you a desired outcome from a formulation, it's not going to get taken. So all of that benefit is wasted. And this is where, as we go on this journey, we build some of the easy building blocks, the ones where we don't compromise on performance. And as this journey evolves, it's understanding how to research and get deeper into that journey to get without the compromise of some of the tougher ingredients to do. What we do in our pipeline work is we have a clean beauty charter. So because I've said before that the regulations and the requirements by brand are very different, what we do is we actually have our own charter on clean beauty formulations, which we proactively formulate towards. So when we're presenting products to the consumer, to the customer, they've got a level of criteria that we're matching. That takes into account a lot of standards, the industry trends, and not only trends now, but what's coming next. So we might talk about carbon footprint, or if we were here 5 years ago, we talked about water usage maybe, and going forward, it's about water footprint or sustainable sourcing or RSPO. So we build a lot of these in now, and hopefully we future-proof it so that our formulas have longevity to come. Raw materials are the building blocks of what we use in formula. I said before, we use roughly on a skincare product, we could have upwards of 25 ingredients, and they're all going to come from different supply chains, different feedstocks, different sources. And what we're doing is researching and looking into those materials to firstly understand, can we achieve it in a more sustainable way? Can we look at the localized supply chain? And we're starting to use and say, okay, I can propose you a surfactant that's produced in the UK for a product in the UK, but I can also propose you one in Thailand that's produced in Thailand, so that we're taking away some of the factors. And I'll come on in a minute about how we're going to try and start measuring that impact. One of the things that's coming through on materials is about nature identical. So again, whereas before, the trend, say going back 5, 10 plus years, we were looking for natural ingredients and sustainable ingredients meant coming from nature. Therefore, we look for cold press oils or extracts. What we're seeing now is actually the better way to have a sustainable footprint is to use fermentation and mimic the actual molecule from nature, but produce it somewhere local or produce it with less impact on the environment, less need for agricultural land, less need for transportation, but still achieve the molecule that we look for. Third part for me is certification. So we know that the credibility we because of the diversification of claims you could make, the NGOs that are out there, and there are numerous NGOs. If you look at the natural ones like EcoCert, Soil Association, Nordic Swan, wherever you go, there's a local NGO which will give you a certification or a validation of your proposition. And then, but what you also get is people like RSPO, where it's more of a global, and you've got a set standard to work to. And what this does is it helps validate your brand, validate your proposition. And we know that the consumer sees that and recognizes some, but they're also getting a little bit of greenwash. So it's a bit of a balance to not just fill up with those of accreditations, but they do play an important part, either at a brand level and a consumer level, or at a CSR level. So you can talk about it from a company perspective, and they help you give that validation to that part. And similar to Stephane mentioned about spice, what we're doing, and I said before, that the life cycle of a formula is a little bit difficult to look at. So we're actually breaking it down into the raw material phase, the development and selection phase, and the manufacturing phase. So the bits that sit within our control, trying to build that life cycle analysis tool to be able to make the same informed decisions on formula that we make on packaging. So the carbon footprint, the water footprint, the biodegradability profile of the ingredients, and then being able to push that out to our customers to help them make informed decisions on what the selection means and what's the best choice. So again, it's good, and it's a similar thing, but then when you get into the granular level, it's a different application, and that's where I think we develop it differently, but we learn from both parts of the business to be able to integrate it into a whole product solution. And that's where some of the trends and some of the work that's happening in packaging will happen in formula. It's just quite complicated to apply at the moment, therefore the industry hasn't got there. But
it's not yet at the same stage, you mean?
No. We're ahead in other areas, but not in this.
Thank you, Matt. So thank you very much for this introduction of Meiyume strategy and the roadmap and guiding principle. Maybe we can come back to one topic that we discussed at the beginning about, you both mentioned some key challenges. One is the consumer habits, the impact of consumer habits and the link to sustainability. Maybe we can go back to this topic, Stephane, on packaging.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. There is a book called The Power of Habits, and for a reason. Habits are powerful. That journey, that sustainability journey, it's going to be full of transformation. I think Matt has mentioned it on the on the formula aspect. It's same for packaging. The way people interact with packaging. So a great driver of impact. You've got the 3 R's, but one very efficient driver of drop of environmental impact would be actually refill reuse. We can see tangible impact. We can see 60 to 70 to 80% reduction when the packaging is reused. 3 to 5 to hopefully a little bit more than that, but in average 3 to 5 times. The problem is that actually we come from a place where the beauty industry is basically 100% single-use product.
Yeah.
Right?
One-time use. Right.
We have to. How do we shift the consumer mindset to feel that they can actually reuse? And because even if brands are actually launching refill and reuse, there are still very strong habits that bring customers to consumers to use the product once and to throw it away, even if it's refill. So it's about the incentive. It's about the communication of the gesture, the awareness, building the awareness, very important. But not, there are, talking about refill reuse, there are other breakthrough adoption. It's it's different business model, different shift in value for the packaging, right? Different business model for the brands, different structure for supply chain. So there's a lot of transformation in there from a consumer standpoint. And that's one of the things we're really trying to push on, and you know that at the transformation team at Meiyume, we really try to have a kind of a design thinking approach and put ourselves in the shoes of consumer, do a lot of user tests to actually, when we create a refill reuse concept, we make sure that from a user experience standpoint, we will create something. We will create, an incentive to change in the perception, in the sensorial experience of how the consumer interacts.
Do you see some segments, Stephane, where refill reuse is, I would say, it's more successful on the market? Because we can see that there is a lot of challenges on consumer habits, even if refill reuse is really efficient in terms of reduction of the footprint. Do you see some examples that you can share?
So I think there is, we see a lot of indie brands starting from that point. It's easier to actually, when you start from scratch, to start from the refill reuse model, because you don't have this transformation part all at every step of the way. So that's great, and indie brands are here to disrupt, to influence the market, to influence bigger brands. I think it's also depending on the categories, on the consumer habits. Some things might never go to refill reuse. We will still use single, in which case it's extremely important. We work on recyclable solutions to really have a kind of a circular approach, and to make sure that even if we stay single use, we can close the loop, right? And we can actually have a more sustainable solution. I think we see some progress right now on the fragrance side, probably due to the standardization of the packaging structure. And there are some great actually refillable systems now, and we see more and more brands launching it. And it changes really the way we approach. We actually do a lot of caps, fragrance caps at Meiyume. We develop a lot of caps for the fragrance brands in the industry, and then we're adapting to that, and we're really happy to push on those concepts and make sure that we can empower the brands to launch those sustainable solutions.
That's right. That the perfume market is one that is already deploying refill reuse on a lot of new product development, not only in the brand. So hope that it will expand to other categories. Maybe we can switch to formula, Matt. Matt, can you give us some challenges on your formulas, on formula side, related to customer habits, difficulties that we can face?
Yeah, I think the consumer, like I mentioned before, it's about how do we make a sustainable product, use a natural alternative ingredient, but still maintain performance. And there are, we're on this journey for, depending on the brand you work in, maybe 10, 15 years. And all of the space, all of the easy ones have been done. So we're on that journey, and we've taken care of the ones that we can do, where we can switch the source of the base material for a surfactant can be sourced from, not from petrochemical, but from natural. Okay, so we've done that, and we know that's easy, and it's become not a point of difference, just a benchmark. As we get into the more specialty chemicals, and if you think about how you want your skincare to feel, and we use a lot of silicone technology to get the nice after feel, and those are some of the things that it's really difficult to replace. If everyone thinks about their first moisturizer as maybe petrolatum, like Vaseline, and we can recreate the texture, we can recreate the performance. We struggle to recreate the two together. So it's trying to match up where can we compromise, where will the consumer compromise, and where do we still need to do more work. And what tends to happen is the ones where we can compromise or we can find a solution gain momentum in the market. The ones that we don't find the right solution don't gain as much momentum because the consumer is still not quite ready to forego the experience. If you think about shower gel, everyone uses most days. The main surfactant has been around forever. It's good at what it does, but it's in some areas it's got a bad connotation around its environmental impact.
Okay.
But it's cheap and it performs well. So all the alternatives require some level of compromise, therefore the traction to replace it has never quite got there. Now, there are some consumers where actually the compromise is okay. And we have brands that we work with where we produce sulfate-free shampoo shower gel. And we've moved that technology to a good place. It still probably has some compromise versus,
Not at the same level, you mean?
Yeah, and that compromise could be performance, it could be cost. Again, when these things gain traction, they become the norm, and then the cost also works. So that's the thing we're looking at, is the consumers are having sometimes to accept. Now there are consumers that are willing to accept that difference, willing to accept a different gesture or a different performance. And I'd say the number or the percentage of the market is growing, but it's still a minority. And that's where we have to find the sweet spot between picking up on what the emotive is, picking up on how the brand meets its proposition from either a CSR or a marketing perspective, and still delivering the technology that delivers a skin benefit or a washing benefit. Because ultimately we're talking about a claim, be it skincare, that has an impact on the user. And we don't want to reduce that impact. We still want to do the functionality of the product. And the breadth of products we work across, some categories like wash, actually it's more acceptable. Some categories like premium skin, actually it's not acceptable to not achieve the feel. And as we go into it more, and you mentioned the upcoming legislation and things are changing, we're going to start losing microplastics. So we use microplastics like nylon in our colour cosmetics, which gives you that nice shine and sheen. We're going to lose that ingredient in the next 18 months to 2 years. And we're trying to find solutions now. We are finding solutions coming through. But it's a big shift change, and it's a step change that will happen. What's interesting on that one is it will step change that will happen based on legislation. But it's getting the consumer acceptance and willing to trade. I said before, I think the other thing that consumers are doing is they're much more informed. They're informed now. So they want to research, whether it's a COVID thing that we've all had more time sitting at home
to take a look on internet and see different.
But also online, So as our brands move to e-com, you can put a lot more information on e-com that you can help sell and cross-sell that product and inform that consumer about the sustainability credentials. So, but I think the biggest change for us in Formula is getting that acceptance or getting that buy-in to why we're changing certain materials that have been around for a long time, and what is the impact.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. It's really interesting. Maybe we got before another topic that you both talk about, that it could be a good information for the people who are watching us, about safety and the regulatory challenges that you are now facing, both on packaging and formulations. Maybe Stephane, can you talk about ABS replacement? Can you give us some insight about this challenge?
Yeah, I think there are some connection with what Matt just said. It's ABS will be banned in some countries, so we're really trying to actively find replacement. But there is no magic solution somehow. There are several, but none are exactly a match for the properties that actually were delivered by a material like ABS, the versatility and so on. Right. So we, at Meiyume, we've put a lot of energy on finding alternatives for ABS. We have, as an example, I think identified six alternatives our team can actually implement on every single project. And it's a case by case, right? Because again, no ideal solution. And every time some risk to mitigate and to validate, I would say. I think the bill of materials have what I often say to to the team is the bill of materials have never changed so much over the last few years. So we have a lot of new elements coming in, and so we are spending a lot of time to actually assess those risks, and also staying very aware of actually any regulation evolution on the market. We see a number of things coming up on especially, for instance, on the Prop 65 regulations. But yeah, overall, it's a big topic, and yeah, we're definitely putting very, very strong attention and I would say risk management on bill of materials. It's been increasing since the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you. I think you already talked about it before, about safety regulation. Any other sharing you want to do on this topic?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I'll give you a real example of so one of the regulations coming now, which is probably a shift, is like I was saying about what happens after use. So we have to consider what happens during the product development and how we get the efficacy, but what happens after we use it.
Yes.
And if you look in the US, we've had Prop 65 for a while. We're now getting state regulations coming from New York, from Colorado, and more will come. And again, slight divergence, but mostly focusing on what happens when I wash it into the water. And it's a big challenge because firstly, we have to truly understand the legislation, and then really work hard. And what we're doing with our suppliers is you've got two elements. You can either clean up your supply chain and the way you make the chemicals, or you can start to isolate the bits that you don't want and just take them forward. There's an argument of which is better, because if you clean up the overall thing, then you're not creating in the first place. If you split it off, you've still got this piece over here that you've got to do something with. So it's building up those regulations of how you look at it. But the point is, that's a US thing at the moment. A lot of our customers are asking us to formulate products for a global market. And therefore, you're again coming back to this compromise, is you're going to make something specific for that market, which then has to layer through the whole of the global teams. So that's one of the big challenges we've got at the moment. It's where the legislation comes in, local by local, and trying to adapt that to make sure that we've got a whole market approach.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we'll have to move to the questions, the Q&A session, because we receive some questions from the floor. So we have a first question on the floor. I will read it for you. What are some factors startups or even established ones should look at when considering to develop a new sustainable product? So maybe on packaging, what will you maybe advise? What to a brand, established brand or a startup willing to launch a product if they want to do something more sustainable?
On a packaging standpoint, I would say, approach a kind of having an approach focused on the 3 R's. Prioritizing the first one, which is reduce. Very important. Every gram counts when we talk about carbon emissions, and when actually you assess the environmental impact of the packaging, every gram will count. So very important to find the right balance. Sometimes it's a trade-off, right, on the perception, depending on actually the brand positioning and the market positioning of the product. But everything is a trade-off. So it's really to spend time to find the right balance, to avoid, unnecessary,
weight,
costs or weight and so on. For really main impact drivers. Second would be having a refill reuse approach, if possible. Again,
yes,
a
you
huge
70% savings in all emissions.
Extremely efficient. So
yes.
It's another, it's a way to kind of double down on, and having a significant actually impact reduction. And then, the recyclability, obviously. especially if the packaging is not refillable. So if it, if for some reason it has to stay a single use, which can happen, extremely important to actually having a long-term vision, even if in the region where the product is sold, the recycle stream is not there yet. It's about really having the vision, the long-term vision of looking elsewhere, and the families of materials that have established recycle stream, and then adopt them
later on,
exactly to make sure that later on, this product will, will fulfill not a kind of a linear approach, but a circular approach in the end.
Okay, thank you very much. And Matt, Gary, because you say that there's a wider range of options,
and
right?
I think, and hopefully I've teed up the answer then, because I think it's don't try and do everything. So it's try and find the element that resonates with the brand proposition. It's the element that resonates with your consumer. So it may be you want to go down a recycle, reuse route, therefore you look for upcycle materials. So we use a lot of materials that come as byproducts from other industries where normally would be thrown away. So you could take an oil from a seed that's used in seedless jam. So they isolate the seed and we gain the oil. So you can build a story around the recycle we use. You can build a story around the impact on the environment after use. Or you can go down the NGO route of looking for a certain claim. Is it natural? Is it organic? And then you can look, we've got products we work on 95% upwards natural content, and it's a front of pack claim. So I think it's about trying to do the thing that resonates with the brand, that resonates with that consumer, and not trying to do
too much claims, but to be efficient.
Yeah, trying to answer every consumer's problem in one product is virtually impossible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this insight and the quite clear answers. So we have a second question. Unlike packaging, which can be easily advertised, agent moving from plastic to paper packaging, how can brands showcase their sustainable formulas? So you answer a little bit to this question with the previous answer.
Yeah.
Do you have other insight or more clarification to share?
I think it's the same answer really. You can use the NGOs. So you can use those front of pack claims to really try and differentiate. But as we said before, everyone's in the same playing area. So 95% natural is a differentiator. Now it's a given. Or you can have your brand policies, and you can talk to those brand policies through your e-com channels. So you can have a policy and you can stick to, and then you can differentiate and say, here's our policy, this is what we do, and this is how we adhere to it. It comes back to that first answer really about decide what's right for that brand and that consumer, and then pull all the levers you can, whether it be your own internal policy, the NGO policy, the marketplace, the upcoming regulations, and then really push on that lever to give your proposition more credibility. But yeah, it's a much more compact, a fuller market versus some of the packaging solutions where you've got, maybe 5 or 6 main materials you talk to.
Yes.
We're going a lot larger on the spread, therefore you've probably got to pick one and say, okay, I'm really going to over-index on this one to give that conversation.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's really clear. I think we have no more questions on the floor. So maybe we'll say goodbye to the people who follow us today. So thank you very much for attending this Meiyume Showcase 2022, and we wish you a nice afternoon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.